On PM Personality Profile tonight, we are celebrating a life well lived. You knew Kwejo Owusu-Efriye, aka Sir John, as the former General Secretary of the NPP and also former CEO of the Forestry Commission. But did you get the opportunity to know who he really was? Tonight, we're telling the story of Sir John through his son, Yao Efriye. My deepest condolences.
Thank you very much, Aisha. Thank you.
How have you and the family been keeping?
It's been very difficult. You know, Sir John passed away almost a year ago. And, you know, since his passing, unfortunately for us, you know, we've had to battle the coronavirus pandemic. And, you know, things haven't gone as smoothly as the family would have hoped.
I can imagine.
It's been a very difficult period for the family, understandably. When you lose somebody of the stature as Sir John, with his remarkable traits, it's not easy. And we have been coping, but we are still recovering from his death.
It is well. And as the only son, I can imagine how daunting your task will be. How many women plus your mother, and you're the only man?
Yeah, so I have 4 other siblings. And of course, there's my mother and the extended family. And you're right, there's been a lot that I've had to quickly learn. You know, one can never prepare for such an event, but when it does happen, you know, you either step into the shoes of leadership, or you know, the pressure gets to you. It's been a combination of both. You know, I've managed the pressure quite well, I believe, but the task is not over. We are still learning on the job, as it were, having to unify the family, having to contain some of the internal family politics that you might expect when something like this happens. And, you know, having to also look after myself and my interests. So it's been a difficult moment for myself.
Wow. But Sir John was loved by many, especially by the NPP, because of his selflessness, because of his hard working, and of course because of his humor. As his son, how would you describe your father, Sir John?
Words are difficult to find when it comes to Sir John, because he was a lot of things. You have mentioned some of those amazing traits that Sir John had. But Sir John that I know as a father, or knew as a father, is somebody who was very empathetic, very warm, courageous. He didn't mince his words. Sometimes he was described as outspoken or acerbic because he did not keep things in. He had a very good heart. So his ability to forgive and to forget was often remarkable. I mean, I experienced that myself personally with him on a number of occasions. Sir John is also somebody who did not pay lip service to things. So Aisha, if he promised you something, rest assured that, you know, he would do his ultimate best to fulfill that promise. And Sir John is also somebody that was able to unify. So in as much as, you know, people would say that he's an outspoken politician because he takes certain positions, Sir John, deep down, you know, was a unifier. You know, he tried to bring people together from different factions. And you can see within his friendship networks, within his politics, the people who call him Wafa, for example, hail from all parts of this country and beyond. And so those are some of the remarkable traits that I remember from my father.
Definitely, I can imagine the pain the family is going through, but how is your mother and your 4 other siblings taking the news?
You know, Aisha, the truth is that it's been very difficult for them. Sir John, at the time of his death, was in the middle of many things. You know, he was dealing with a number of personal family matters. He was dealing with his politics, and we felt that his job wasn't done. And the ramifications of that mean that particularly my mother has found it incredibly difficult. Her health isn't the best. And so when the news came of Sir John's passing, her husband's passing, she took it in a very difficult way. She has since bounced back. She has found the energy that only the good Lord can provide in these times. But all the same, we're having to manage her, quite carefully. My sisters are equally the same. They are broken. Often, when we visit Sir John's associates and friends, and we pay them courtesy calls, and they start to recount their engagement with Sir John, it only brings back, sad memories of their father. So, look, I'm indifferent, of course. I've had to contain my emotions as best as possible.
Especially you being the man.
Absolutely. I've had to contain my emotions. It hasn't necessarily meant that I haven't been emotional. There's been times when, we've had to overcome those emotions because, you need a cool head to prevail, and one has to be pragmatic because the task is yet to be complete. And that is how I view, I have dealt with these last few months.
So you weep sometimes, you hide because you don't want the women to see you. So they
think
can
it's
also break down.
Absolutely. I think I've been accused of being too hard, but that hasn't been the case, of course. As a man, one cannot go around crying all the time, weeping all the time, or feeling sorry for myself, because we have a responsibility to fulfill. But yes, I mean, in my private moments, you recollect and, you weep every now and then because, Sir John was such a remarkable father to all of us.
I pray that the good Lord console you.
Thank you very much.
And the whole family. Many knew Sir John through politics, and of course, if you've been following politics in Ghana, you know how interesting he made politics look. Indeed, his own counterpart, Johnson Asiedun Ketia, when the news broke of his demise, said some kind words about him, because we know they normally would banter and we know how they made politics look very interesting. But did he want to do anything else apart from politics?
Sir John, I think he's a born politician. Obviously, I wasn't there during his student days, but from some of the tributes that I have heard, some of the tributes which have been written, Sir John, was a natural leader, a natural politician, very charismatic. His ability to convey, very difficult messages easily, his ability to get on with people from all walks of life, his love for the arts, philosophy, history, law. These are, this is Sir John, the politician. And for as long as I know, as part of our family history, which has a political lineage from my grandfather's UP days to our current juncture. Sir John went through that mill, and he was shaped by the history of the family in politics, and that ultimately led him to become the man that he became in later life, an experienced, an adept, patient, an astute man in all sense of the word. Yes.
Did he ever tell you the story of how he became a politician, or how it all started?
He has told us a lot about his life story. It wasn't by grand design that Sir John would become this national asset. He believed in politics. Grassroots politics is his thing. He believes in the causes that many of us believe in, that people should have the right to education, should have the right to freedom of speech, people should have access to healthcare, and these are some of the issues that Sir John cared about, which is why he related so well with the ordinary person. He spoke their language. He tried to walk their walk, and also mingle and eat from the same bowl as the ordinary person, because Sir John was very much an ordinary person. The circumstances of his birth, living in Sakra Ono, in a very rural agrarian community, coming through that journey, going to university in Legon. In fact, he recounted that the first time he came to Accra was when he went to Legon. So, you know, Sir John did not see himself as a politician in the early days, but the character and the characteristics that he had, you know, made him a natural politician, and he followed his passion.
Okay, so did he tell you about school days? Was he a politician? Did he do student politics even whilst student?
Yes, Sir John was one of the student leaders, all the way from Bekwai SDA, where he had a secondary school education. When he went to the University of Ghana, he was part of the SRC leadership at Mensa Saba Hall. I think during the 70s, he was one of the national student leaders against military dictatorship. At the time, you know, I think during the Champon regime, he was quite active in politics, and that carried on through the 70s and early 80s when the PNDC came in, and he left for London because he felt his life was under threat. So, you know, that was Sir John as a student leader, and of course his current political history is known to many of us, but you know, from the early days, this is the Sir John that his colleagues and his friends knew.
So how was his political life like? I mean, and how did the family manage a politician like Sir John?
We could never manage him. And we didn't intend to manage him either. He made it very clear that his family ought to be insulated from his politics. And he said to me a number of times, you know, you don't understand. You know, when you get older, you would understand what I'm doing. You know, he kept us outside of politics. But look, naturally, when you live in a political home, it's very difficult not to be involved in politics. You would come to the house and see people queued up to see him, through his telephone calls in the morning, through his radio interviews. So it was very difficult not for us to be part of his journey. But in terms of his politics or us following him on campaign trails or across the country, you know, we did not do that. And even if we volunteered to do that, he told us no. He didn't want to bring us into the heat of politics because he didn't want his family to be exposed. And I think he did that quite well. Which is why often people will ask me, you know, how many siblings do you have, or what is your mother like? Because we were not in the public limelight, because Sir John occupied that space and we let him be.
Okay, so did that, would you say his political life actually affected your growing up, or, I mean, how did it impact on your growing up?
No, it had a huge impact on our upbringing. As I've said, you know, when you live in a political house, I mean, you see it all. You see the competing interests, you know, that he has to deal with. You see his ups and downs. You know, often he'll flare up, get mad, angry, shout at something. But, you know, often at times he's also very cool, calm, and collected. You know, you saw the backroom negotiations with party elders, you saw the telephone conversations. So you could not escape it. And, you know, how he related with people, his ability to galvanize support. Even though we were insulated, you know, we lived and breathed Sir John's political journey. So it had a huge impact, particularly on myself, on my upbringing, and I think I will speak for my sisters as well. And it has shaped us into who we are today.
And whilst a politician, people described Sir John as a very strong man, and I think he presented himself as a strong man. He presented himself as a very vibrant man and a no-nonsense person. Was that who he really was in real life?
Yes and no. It's a combination of the two. Sir John always said that he cannot be all things to all men. And his character is one that, you know, once he gets something off his chest, that is it. He doesn't hold it any longer. And in fact, he often said to me, you know, don't ever cry over spilled milk. You know, when something is done, it is done. And that was the trait that Sir John exhibited. You know, he gets something off his chest, as acerbic, as forthright as possible, for his message to be felt, and then he moves on. But on the other side, he also understood when to be more patient, more diplomatic, adept in getting his point across. So Sir John is a combination of both. You know, the carrot and stick approach. You know, when you do well, he will reward you with the carrot. When you do badly, he will, you know, apply the stick philosophy, as it were.
What kind of a father was he?
Precisely as I've described. Carrot and stick. You know, when you do well, he rewards you abundantly, and he will tell the whole world what you have done. Oh, Yao has done this. You know, Ivy has done that, and he'll be very proud of you. He often didn't show you that he was proud of you, but from the conversations that he would have with other people, which will come back to you, will tell you that this is a father, you know, who is proud of his children. But at the same vein, at the same time, if you did something wrong, he would not mince his words. You know, and looking back, particularly for me as a man, as a young man, I am extremely grateful for those hard lessons, because Sir John was at times quite hard on me. You know, it was quite hard, because I think that he knew how he wanted to mold me. And since his passing, those lessons that he taught me, those conversations, sometimes when he reprimanded me, I didn't understand some of his proverbs and his proverbial approach to life. I now understand, and I am eternally grateful for those lessons.
Kweku Amoateng Efriye, he is the son of the late Sir John, who goes to rest this week. And we've been talking about what kind of a politician he was and what kind of a father he was to his family. How was his life like? Because we did not get the opportunity to actually get to know who he really was. We only knew him as Sir John, the politician. When I returned from this break, you remember in 2017 when he lost the delegates elections and he says, fear delegates. We'll get to know the story behind that. Also, when the party came into power, many were expecting Sir John to be giving ministerial appointment. All other names, Gapoha, all others came up. Finally, he landed at the Forestry Commission. We'll be finding out from Yao Efriye how his father felt about this. Was he disappointed? All of that after this break. Stay with me. Welcome back to PM Personality Profile. We are celebrating a man who many have described as very hardworking. In fact, his party, the NDC, has described him as a strong force behind the party. No wonder he led the party to win elections many times, and then all the other things he did for the party. Tonight, we are celebrating a life well lived, and I'm here with his son, Yao Amoateng Efriye, his only son, to be precise. And I'm actually happy to be with you, and I'm getting to know more about Sir John. So tell me, in 2017, when Sir John lost his position, and then, I mean, his watchword was fear delegates. How did he feel about that? And did he tell you why he kept saying fear delegates?
Yes, I think the delegates conference was a couple of years beforehand. But the fear delegates comment is something which has become part of our political language in Ghana. But it came from a place of disappointment from Sir John. You know, the elections that he lost in Tamale, I believe, Wasn't the first time he had lost out in a political context. But Sir John believed that he had more to give to the National Party. He felt that he had grown into the role as General Secretary, and indeed, his fan base, his support base, encouraged him to go for a second term. His agenda, his manifesto was very clear. It was one of continuity. It was one which would unify the party and to ensure that His Excellency, the current president, would be properly positioned within the context of the party for re-election in 2016. So I think that was at the crux of the matter. That was the message that he carried into the delegates conference. But of course, we all know what transpired. He lost that election. In his view, there were some elements, some forces within the party that had canvassed support against him. Of course, it's a political contest, so that was to be expected. But he felt that the manner in which the campaign took, the tone that the campaign took, was quite low. And the fear delegate's comment was as a result of a number of the promises that had been given to Sir John that they would vote for him. And of course, come election night, those promises were not fulfilled in terms of votes at the ballot. And the very morning, I believe the interview was done with Adom FM, if I recall correctly. And he said that one must always be careful and fear delegates. And typical Sir John, one would have expected him to be deeply disappointed and not maybe listen to the radio or take interviews, but he went about life normally because of the principle that he has always lived by, which is, one should not cry over spilled milk. Once the deed is done, once something is over and done with, you simply move on, reconcile, and tackle the days ahead with your head held high. Okay. So that was, the context in which that statement came about.
In 2017, when the NPP came into power, many were expecting that Sir John will be elevated above CEO of the Forestry Commission. There are many pointing at Gapoa. There were many talking about ministerial appointments. So many were actually disappointed when he finally landed as CEO of the Forestry Commission. Did he feel same?
Sir John did not want a ministerial position. We spoke about this quite extensively. I used to ask him, so assuming that, Your Excellency, President wins the election, what are your, political aspirations? What do you want to do, essentially? And he said, no, minister, dear, minister.
Okay.
He felt that he could give more
in the background.
At an agency level, running a state-owned enterprise. And Gapoa, for a number of reasons that perhaps, we may not go into in this interview.
He really expected to
go
to Gapoa.
Was number one on his list. There were other places that he considered, but in the end, His Excellency the President gives that directive. He gives that that mandate to people, and there were a lot of back and forths. There were a lot of expectations that he would get that position, but the president, in his own wisdom, decided that the Forestry Commission was best suited to Sir John's skills and ability, and we all know what he did when he went to the Forestry Commission. I mean, it was a remarkable 3-4 years that he spent at the Forestry Commission, where his number one agenda was jobs, driving the youth agenda, ensuring that the commission was properly staffed, run, had the visibility that it deserved within the government setup. And the legacy of Sir John, the Forestry Commission, perhaps is another conversation, but I think overall speaking, I think the commission is grateful that he became the chief executive at the time that he did, and the results of which today are quite remarkable in hindsight.
We loved Sir John, but God loves him most. And I'll just say, may his soul rest in peace. But what would you say are his legacies?
I think the legacies of Sir John are that he's a unifier. Sir John cuts across political lines. We've seen the outpouring of support and goodwill from, all parts of the country. All political parties have mourned Sir John as if, he was one of their own. And I believe that is one of the biggest legacies that he leaves for the politics of this country. His ability to go beyond party lines, to reach over the aisle and convince people of his own position. We've seen that with some of the young men that he has nurtured, from the PPP, from the CPP, NDP, etc. So I think that would be the standout legacy. The other legacy that Sir John left is that he was just simply a remarkable heart. People would often say, "Oh, come to me. I'm a Forestry Commissioner. The man was overly generous. Sometimes we found it baffling. We found it,
to the extreme.
It's too extreme. Why is he so nice all the time? He would literally remove food from his mouth to give to somebody. Literally, I've seen it on countless occasions. One of his favorite foods is plantain, roasted plantain.
Okay.
He would buy it with his nuts, and he would literally break the plantain and give it to a driver, a security officer, whoever. Sir John is a giver. And I think that legacy, giver, a unifier, somebody who was able to understand and empathize with people is I think, one of the standout traits and legacies that Sir John leaves for all of us.
What are his favorite moments?
Sir John is a very simple man. His favorite moments are, sitting in a room watching a film, CNN, whatever, but having people around him, laughing at his numerous jokes, him telling his story, him being a center of attention, but being surrounded by friends and loved ones, privately. Sir John wasn't the type to go to restaurants. Sir John wasn't the type to go to bars or lounges. In fact, for his own birthday, you have to convince him and force him to a restaurant. He would not go. He would not go to a restaurant. He was a homely person, a very God-fearing person. One of his favorite moments is in the mornings or on the weekend, he would play his Seventh-day Adventist gospel music, and he can play that for hours on end. And he'll be in his room thinking and recollecting, and he enjoyed those downtime moments. He also loved reading. He was an avid reader. He loved reading Winston Churchill. He loved the classics. Shakespeare, Macbeth was one of his favorites. He loved the Canterbury Tales, Geoffrey Chaucer. He loved that kind of the arts. He loved the arts, music, theater, current affairs. So that is Sir John. On the weekends, he would wear his classic uniform, as we called it. It's polo, khaki, either trousers or shorts, and trainers.
Okay.
He would get in his car, drive around, and he would play the likes of Lumba, whom he loved. He would play the the traditional Kiti, Adwa songs in his car. And that is Sir John. He was just such a down-to-earth character, down-to-earth personality, a great man in all sense of the word.
I know him to be humorous. Definitely, yes. You won't go to Sir John and come out without smiles on your face. You remember any of his jokes?
Oh, I mean, there are so many. There are so many jokes. And Sir John doesn't mean to crack jokes, but he's just so witty. He's very witty. He can point out something. For example, you might be wearing a certain funny color, and Sir John can make a joke out of it.
Okay.
You know, he can look at your haircut and make a mockery out of it. You know, all in good humor, all in good faith. You know, he just had a number of ways to make people laugh and make people feel at ease. When you were tense, Sir John can find seconds to make you feel at ease.
Okay.
You know, and it's a remarkable trait that he exhibited.
As his son, or was there a time that as his children, your mother, the family felt that, look, the man was being bashed out over there? You know how politics can get dirty in this country. Have you ever regretted your father being a politician?
No, not at all. Because, you know, we are beneficiaries of some of the good deeds that he did in politics. Today I walk around and, you know, somebody will say, oh, that's Sir John's son. And, you know, the outpouring of love, support is overwhelming. And I believe that had he not been in that profession, in that sport, which is politics, perhaps we would have still felt the extension of people's goodwill, but perhaps not on the same scale. And so, you know, he felt that doing politics was for the good. And after his passing, we are seeing the benefits of his legacy in politics. And so, you know, I don't regret it per se. But you're right. You know, when he was in the heat of politics, you know, it was often, sometimes, you know, you were a bit worried. I think worry is the right word. That, you know, there'll be a scandal or something would happen, and the media would pick up on it, and you know how sensationalist our media environment can be sometimes. You know, so I was always worried that you know, how he handled himself sometimes could have been more discreet, perhaps less so flamboyant, for want of a better expression. But, you know, again, as I said earlier in the interview, you know, we could not change who Sir John was. That was Sir John. You know, Sir John will pick up his phone and there'll be 30 people in a room and he will speak on loudspeaker. Right?
Okay.
Whereas I would not do that, but Sir John would do that.
Okay.
So that is the person that he was, and we had to learn to deal with his character, because he did not mean bad, which is why he did the kind of things and said the kind of things that he did. But in hindsight, I am grateful that he entered politics, because today I'm a living beneficiary of that legacy.
So you talked about weekends, he putting on his polo shirts with his shorts. Was he a sportsman?
Oh, Sir John liked to believe he was a sportsman, but
but he wasn't.
He tells me that in his younger days he was part of a football team.
Okay.
I did not see him kick a ball once. So I mean, there was I think a couple of years ago, we donated a few items to the people of Sakrono. There was a charity football match held in his honor. That was the first time I saw Sir John kick any ball. Sir John never ran. In fact, we bought him a treadmill. The treadmill gathered dust for years. He never stepped on a treadmill once. You know, Sir John would say, "Oh, I'll walk today. I want to walk today. I want to keep fit." That never happened. So Sir John wasn't really much of a sportsman. He loved sports. Arsenal was his team.
Okay.
And I am also an Arsenal fan because of him.
Okay.
And on weekends, we would watch Arsenal together in disappointment.
Did you eat your fufu before watching?
You know, often we would eat after, because it was better. It was better to eat after.
Because now will always disappoint you.
Yeah, exactly. But he loved sports. He loved watching sports. And but he wasn't really much of a sportsman. Yes.
Wow, so much to chew on about Sir John. So how many siblings? 4, you said?
There are 5. 5 of us.
5 of you, 4 girls.
4 girls.
Which of you is toying Sir John's life?
I think we're all trying our very best to live up to the legacy of our father.
Are you all in politics?
No, nobody is in politics yet. But I know that there is interest within the family for one of the siblings or even extended family to enter the arena of politics. I think for us it's important that the name and the legacy of Sir John is not lost. You know, in our own unique way, we will keep his legacy. But naturally, as a politician, it would be ideal if, you know, one of the siblings would enter that space. But, you know, we are all going to try our very best to keep up the legacy of Sir John in diverse ways, in unique ways, as best as possible.
What was Sir John mentoring you to take his place in politics? I
wouldn't say he was mentoring me per se, but by being close to him, you know, it was very difficult for me not to learn from him. You see, I learned a lot from him. I learned how he dealt with people, you know, and he always told me that I have the natural flair to one day
become a politician,
perhaps enter
politics,
the arena of politics. But he always felt that I was more technocratic because I'm in a private sector myself. But he always felt that there will come a time when I would need to move beyond the private sector and enter into the public space. Have you thought about it yourself? I've thought about it quite a bit, particularly since his demise. You know, it's never an easy decision to enter, you know, our politics, but it's something that creeps up in my thinking every now and then. Perhaps, you know, when the opportunity is right, you know, who knows? You know, one might engage, one might become much more present in public affairs. Who knows? Politics is tough. It can get dirty sometimes. You still want to take your father's place? Well, I think anything worth doing is difficult. You know, we can serve in diverse ways in the public space without necessarily being at the front line of politics, right? So I don't have a magic wand. I don't want to make any statements that may appear too hasty. But the desire is there, given the stature of my father, given all that he accomplished in our national life. I think it would be quite negligible of us as siblings for one of us not to enter the arena of politics. And so I think, you know, God's time is the best, as they say, Aisha. So let's pray that we overcome the funeral and we can then begin to plot and plan for what the future may hold. What's your relationship with your father's party, the NPP? I have a good, cordial, business-like relationship with the party. Okay. I wouldn't identify myself as, you know, one of the sort of up-and-coming young people within the party. I don't think that is the case, but okay. Certainly the party folk are aware of me, some of them. Some of the hierarchy within the party, I know who I am. And of course, I have contributed in diverse ways to the party, particularly in the last elections and even before that. So when Sir John was there, he was, you know, front and center of these things, but obviously since his demise, we've had to step up and become much more visible. And so, you know, it's a challenge that I relish, and I will embrace that challenge. But again, it's a steep learning curve, one that I am, you know, learning on the job daily, every day. You know. Would you take an opportunity if you're offered? I mean, to serve in the party? Aisha, you. Aisha, I think a call to serve is something that I would think about very carefully, because, you know, once you lay your bed, you have to lie in it, and so, you know, laying your political bed is not something that you know, you have to do in haste. It has to come with a lot of thinking, not just for yourself, but for your entire family, because politics It's not just about you, it's also about your entire family. So that consultation needs to take place. But of course, if an opportunity were to arise to serve at any capacity within the party or to assist His Excellency to carry out his mandate, absolutely. It's something that I relish. It's something that I would be, willing and happy to consider. Yes.
Well, we talked about Sir John pretending to be a sportsman, but he loved sports, and
Yes,
you talked
correct.
about how he loved that Lumba and all others. What would you say are his other hobbies? I mean, did you know of any?
His other hobbies are politics. As simple as that. He loved it. He lived and breathed politics and current affairs. And it didn't matter whether it was politics of India or politics of Cote d'Ivoire. He just loved current affairs and politics, which is why, when you come to the house, even though we pay for the DSTV premium service, there's only one channel we watch at home, which is CNN. We watch CNN from morning to evening. When you go to his office, it's the same thing. Apart from, his downtime in the car, or perhaps on the weekends when he will listen to his gospel music, everything he did, he lived and breathed politics. So I would say that politics was as much a profession and a hobby at the same time. Yes.
We're still here with Yao Amoatin Friye. He's the only son of Kwejo Use Friye, aka Sir John. What are your fond memories of Sir John?
My fond memories of Sir John would be our morning meetings. Our morning meetings were brief. We'd normally have breakfast. We'll talk about his agenda for the day. We'll watch the news, and we'll just have our one-to-one moment. I will particularly miss that intimate interaction with my father. I will also miss his kind heart. He was very kind to me. I didn't lack anything, and I'll speak for all my siblings. We did not lack anything, whether it be, advice or, monetary support, or, just generally being there for us. So, that has left quite a void. I don't see anybody filling that void for now, except, of course, the Almighty God, who looks after all of us. But, in terms of a person, a human being that can fulfill that role, I think, that is no longer. So I will particularly miss those two moments.
One question I should have asked during his, when we're talking about his political life, was he ever disappointed with his party, the NPP?
I'll show you. You asked a very difficult question. No, I think, look, naturally, as a human being, let's put aside Sir John, there were times that he felt purely on human terms that, he was misunderstood. For example, some of his critics within the party would say that, oh, Sir John speak by heart, quote unquote, or Sir John, shoots from the hip, or Sir John, quote unquote, doesn't know how to speak. And those, that got to him, because he felt that he was a capable, direct and efficient communicator, and he knew how to get his message across. Aisha, if we recall, when he made the bold pronouncement that President Akufo-Addo should get the nomination, and whether he's in a wheelchair or not, he as General Secretary will ensure that it happens. Aisha, it was warfare. I recall. In fact, that interview was done with Joy. I recall that vividly. And he was lambasted. He was destroyed within the party for making such a bold and courageous declaration at a time when the party had its own internal frictions which needed to be ironed out. And he came out. He came out and made a bold declaration, which today, the ramifications of which have meant that we are where we are today as a party of government. And so, Sir John felt quite hurt when people said that he couldn't speak or he spoke out of turn or somehow he didn't convey a certain message properly. So those were some of the disappointments that he felt from his critics within the party. Of course, the electoral losses, is part and parcel of the game of politics. And even though he was upset momentarily, over time he overcame that and then went about his business quite normally.
What did he do in times that he felt so down? How did he manage it?
He would normally be very quiet. When he was down, you could see it. It was written all over him. And in those moments, you leave him alone. You don't speak too much. And you just let him be. He would take comfort in scripture. He would read his favorite Bible verses, or he had this book of quotations. Often he would read that to find words of inspiration, or he would play his gospel music. He would play the hymns. He would play. There's a particular composer, a Seventh-day Adventist composer. I think his name is Sam Asaribediako.
Okay.
Sir John particularly loved his music.
Okay.
So he would play Sam Asaribediako's songs for hours. And that's how he meditated. That's how he got things off his chest. So whenever I saw that he was in that particular mood, it's best to leave him alone. Come back later and then, engage him.
Are you also a Seventh-day Adventist?
I was born in the church, but I am not a practicing Seventh-day Adventist.
And your
I believe in God, of course. I'm a Christian, but my church going isn't as it should. Let's say.
And your other siblings?
My other siblings were all born in the church, but over time, some have found different churches to go to.
They followed their husbands?
Perhaps.
What are your last words to Sir John as he goes home?
My last words to my father, Sir John Forestry, is that I am grateful to him for not only having put me on this earth, but having done everything materially available to him to ensure that I am who I am today. The sacrifices that he made for myself and my siblings is one that we will never forget. He sacrificed the best part of about 18 years of his life living in London, and a lot of people are not aware of that. He lived in the UK, where he sacrificed for us to be brought over to him, to live with him, to go to school, have a quality education. When he could have been in Ghana practicing law, perhaps he could have started his political career much earlier in the 90s than he did. So all those sacrifices that he made for me, my siblings, and for the entire family is one that I'll never forget. And all I want to really say to him is just thank you. Thank you that we are here. Because not all parents give birth to people and even, give them a bottle of water to sip on. But here we are, very fortunate, very lucky that I was born at the time that I was to a father like Sir John, and here we are, to continue his legacy. So it's just a simple gratitude to say thank you to our father.
How do you intend to keep his legacy?
We have a number of ideas, but we will start immediately after the funeral to put in place the foundation, the Sir John Foundation. We believe that his good deeds should not end because he's no longer here. So the Sir John Foundation is one of many ways that we will remember the great man. But of course, there are other ways that myself and the extended family and my siblings will think about to keep his memory alive.
And what will the foundation be doing?
It's early days. It's early days, but we really want to capture the essence of the man. His giving spirit, So we want to remember the downtrodden, the needy, those who would ordinarily not be part of society, those who are marginalized. We want to remember them. We want to do good works. We want to work with government where possible. We want to work with the private sector, civil society, the media, to ensure that we can raise funding to ensure that the causes that Sir John cared about are properly supported. We will think about some of the other aspects of the foundation, and in good time, I'm sure you'll be the first person to hear about it.
Thank you so much, Yao Amwating Efriye. He's the only son of Sir John, for letting us into the life of your father. He's gone, but not forgotten. And I want to encourage you to be strong. And anytime you feel down, I want to encourage you to find solace in the Lord. And for the family, my deepest condolence, all of us, and may Sir John's soul rest in peace. Viewers, thank you so much for watching. My name is Aisha Ibrahim. Same time next week, we're bringing you another edition of PM Personality Profile. Enjoy the rest of our programs.
Tabrua, Bedinia, Naso de